Last week, for those of you who are here, our Minister Marcus announced that he wasn't going to be able to continue, Emily wouldn't be able to continue their service here, and it was almost like a death, and I'm sure it upset people who were here. I had a death in my family about 6 weeks ago, and these things all kind of pile up in a way. And today, we're talking about theism and agnosticism, atheism. And while my mom was passing away, there was about a 6-hour period as she lingered between this world and the next. And I'm watching her getting ready to go somewhere. And there's this time, very quiet time, when you wonder what happens here. Is she going somewhere? Is she going to be alive in another world? The theist in me thinks that. Is she going to reincarnate? Is she coming back as a butterfly? Is she going to be an angel? Or is it going to be more like physics? And kind of nothing happens. She just follows the rules of science and kind of disappears and dissolves. And as the hours pass, you really do go through pretty much everything you've ever thought. Because in the end, we don't know. And one thing I like about our congregation here is that ability to ponder these particular questions, which we're going to be doing today. And last week, it was almost like another death in our congregation. And those same feelings came up. The emptiness, going over the good times, grieving about the times that won't happen. And that big one, what comes next? What will it be like? And to have today our topic of theism and agnosticism is so poignant because 2 years ago there was quite a split in our congregation, for those of you who were here, about whether such people could worship together or be together in our meetings. And 2 years later, that's gone. It's an incredible change. There's been a healing here. And I just thought I would point that out together, that there is room for agnostics and room for theists here. There used to be doubt, and now I feel certainty. And as we grieve going forward, let's remember this growth that has occurred over the last 2 years. That's why I come to church, often for my own healing and for the healing of our group as well.
It's a real honor to be here with you on the Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh traditional territory, together in sacred space. Life is a journey. As humans, we experience with all of who we are, our body, mind, heart, and what I think of as that purpose-making, interconnecting part of us that I name spirit. Now, my spiritual journey has taken me on a winding road with various crossroads, hurdles, and boulders along the way. At each challenging spot, I had to look in my belief bag and see what was there to help me, what had to be jettisoned or added so that I could have the support I needed to continue. Now, I know, as has been mentioned, that this congregation has recently faced a huge challenge, the resignation of your wonderful co-ministers, Marcus and Emily. And I've heard from several of you how painful it is, how hard. I've also heard your compassion for these dear people, how you want to support them to be with their extended circle of family and friends in the San Francisco Bay Area, while Emily is on the road to recovery from anxiety and depression. How can our Unitarian community and tradition support us in these challenging times? What might each of us learn as we reflect on our own beliefs that might give us support and resilience as we face loss and change in our lives? Today, I want to offer some parts of my story and how my life experiences affected what I believe in. And so as you listen, I invite you to think about your own story. What life challenges caused you to re-examine what you believe in? How did you respond to them? What or who helped you along the way? As a young child, before I was conscious of any particular religion, I remember being fascinated by just looking at a single blade of grass, or noticing when an ant on the ground was carrying something so much bigger than itself, and wondering how that was possible. Wondering what happened to my cat after she died. One day, there I am, standing up on a swing that my dad had built in our backyard. It was a hot prairie summer day, and I was swinging back and forth, humming to myself. And I remember this experience of feeling so connected to everything. I felt peaceful and at one. Unitarians name this source direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces which create and uphold life. How many of us, when we were children, had an intense experience of awe and wonder? How many of you? Right. Children are born with spirituality, a sense of being connected with something beyond ourselves, whether it's nature, the universe, the larger community, or what some call spirit or God, which goes by many names. As we grow up, we can have support to further that connection or not. Now, I grew up in the dominant culture in Canada, white, European heritage, Christian. In my family's case, that meant the United Church of Canada. And I went there until I was about 5. And that's when I met my first Crossroads. I remember I was standing at our house's front doorway. I was standing right in the lintel. And my parents were out walking towards the car, and I stopped, and I realized I didn't really want to go. You know, like the stories, I couldn't make connections with my life. The crafts, well, they weren't that interesting, and the cookies and the juice just didn't cut it. So I called to my mom, and I said, "Mom, I don't want to go." And she looked back at me and said, "Oh, okay." And they headed off to church, and I got to stay home with my older siblings. I consider that the first moment of my freedom of conscience. Now, I did go back to the United Church as a teenager because I found inspiration in a loving and accepting God. To me, Jesus was a compassionate human teacher who sought justice for those who were on the margins of society. I was drawing from the source that Unitarians describe as Jewish and Christian teachings, which call us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors as ourselves. What inspired you growing up? Now, fast forward to when I was 17. I actually faced a roadblock. My mother had been battling breast cancer for many years, and she was losing the battle. I became more aware of the fragility of life and the reality of death than many of my friends at that age. Finding meaning was crucial to giving my life a sense of direction. and I wanted to find a clear purpose to my life. So one weekend in February, I go to my brother's cabin in the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. It's a clear day and the Chinook winds are blowing. The top of the hill is free from snow. I lie down, close my eyes, sunbeams warming my face. I become aware of a knowing, an embodied experience of that oneness with all that exists. I understand that we are all on a journey of learning about what life is and how to become more loving because we are all kin, all related. I come to know that the purpose of my life is to love people, care for them, learn about the nature of our existence, which all involves listening and being patient. That experience eventually led me to make a commitment to live a spiritual life. After my mother's death, as I went through university, I started to discover more about what Unitarians describe as wisdom from the world's religions, which inspires us in our ethical and spiritual life. I took classes in world religions and philosophy. I visited various spiritual communities with my friends, and we got into spirited discussions. Who here can relate to having your understanding expanded as young adults? I learned also from what Unitarians describe as the words and deeds of prophetic women and men, which challenge us to confront powers and structures of evil with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love. Mahatma Gandhi was a key role model for me. His teachings about nonviolence and its role in civil disobedience to right a wrong. I added those beliefs to my bag. There's one story I want to share. Near the end of his life, Gandhi refused again to eat. He was trying to end the fighting between Hindus and Muslims. At this time, a Hindu man came to him, crying and feeling helpless. He told Gandhi that he had killed a Muslim child. Gandhi asked him why he did it. He said because a Muslim man had killed his son. Gandhi told him that to heal his soul and feel peace inside, the Hindu man must find a boy whose parents had been killed. He told the man to raise the boy he found as his own son. He told the Hindu man, make sure you find a Muslim boy and raise him as a Muslim. Then your soul will live again. Who have been your role models? What did you learn from them that you put in your belief bag? Because of what I was learning, I was again at a crossroads. I talked to my United Church minister. I told him that I couldn't understand Jesus as divine, but an important human role model, but not my only one. I wanted to be able to draw on various world religions and philosophy and science. He actually was the one that suggested I check out the Unitarians. And eventually, years later, I did. In the fall of 1992, over 25 years ago, I started attending the Unitarian Church of Vancouver. And while there, I heard people openly questioning things, supporting one another to learn about their own life experiences and others. I felt comfortable about opening my belief bag and talking with others about what was in it, maybe removing some things, adding others. I knew that I could grow spiritually in the company of people of all ages in that community. And I chose to be part of that Unitarian movement so I could support others in their spiritual journeys. Now, these were positive experiences, and I had a community of support. And even with that, I kept coming back to this boulder: suffering. That theological boulder about why bad things happen to good people. It was there during my ministerial training and all through the years that I've served congregations. Now, of course, I knew that being human and mortal will involve suffering, illness, death. When you love something, sometimes you have to let it go, and that's painful. It helped me a lot when I learned about the Buddhist perspective on there being so many causes of suffering, some of which I could control, and many of which I could not. And yet there remained unanswered questions for me. After I served the Calgary congregation for 6 years, I moved to Montreal with my then partner. We dreamed of doing this for many years, and finally it was happening. He had connections with family and friends and work colleagues. I had connections with family and friends and colleagues, and I was taking some time to consider how the spiritual direction training that I'd had in Calgary, how I would want to live into that when I was in Montreal. And then, gradually things started to fall apart. I had a bad reaction coming off an antidepressant medication that I'd been on for a few years. My mother's partner got ill, his work situation got worse, and all of this put stress on our relationship. Now, what was going to be a dream actually turned into a nightmare. I remember how disillusioned I felt. I'd been working so hard to do what I thought was the right thing, and I just felt like it was all falling away. I doubted so many things that had given my life direction. The relationship that I thought would continue lifelong ended. With my own world falling apart, did I really want to be there to love and care for other people? Did I really want to continue as a minister? Was I doing all of that just to please some higher power from my childhood memory? Or was I doing it because I believed it was the right thing to do? It was like looking in my belief bag and seeing this big hole in the bottom, and everything had fallen out. I felt empty and lost, sitting by the side of the road, not sure what to do or where to turn. The depression returned, descending like a heavy weight on my mind, heart, body, and spirit. How many of us have been in that kind of place where we feel like our world has fallen apart? We don't know who to turn to or where to find solace. After a while, I remembered to turn to those things that have always given me hope. Creative expression, reading novels or watching films, listening to music, seeking for glimmers of truth about living and insights about suffering. I turned to my wonderful community of friends and colleagues where I could ask my questions, voice my doubts, cry my despair, and vent my anger. Friends kept reminding me about the Jewish Torah's character of Job, who gets angry with God when all the things in his life are taken away. But did I even believe in God anymore? As I was standing by the side of that spiritual road, I turned around and I saw the Path of Atheism. As Unitarians, we describe that source as humanist teachings, which counsel us to heed the guidance of reason and the results of science, and warn us against idolatries of the mind and spirit. What idolatries had I set up in my mind and spirit? And how could my reason help me? What findings in social science about suffering and how humans respond to it could help? I took those various things that had fallen out of my belief bag and I examined them one by one to see what still held true for me and what I needed just to get rid of. And one thing I realized that was from a childhood faith was in a Father God. In some ways, during my mother's illness as a teenager, I had shifted my need for that stable, loving figure onto the God of that more restricted Christian understanding of a God that was all-loving, all-powerful, all-knowing Father figure. In the decades since then, I had shifted away from that understanding, but when crisis came, fear and loss overwhelmed me, and those deep-seated beliefs rose up subconsciously. I was looking for something that could save me from pain and suffering, that could offer me some form of salvation. At the root of salvation is salve, to heal. And that's what I did. It took several years of mending a broken heart and a broken spirit, allowing my body and mind and spirit to heal in its own natural time, one that I could not control. It meant feeling the emotional pain, not turning away from it. Allowing myself to also recognize that my suffering reflected the common human suffering of so many around me. I didn't return to the beliefs of my childhood, although I recognized and honored those parts of my Christian heritage still important to me. I used my reason and passion to guide me towards a new direction. I returned again to what Unitarians describe as spiritual teachings of earth-centered traditions, which celebrate the sacred circle of life and instruct us to live in harmony with the rhythms of nature. Like that little girl on the swing in the summer breeze, I felt inspired and connected, but now as an adult woman, looking to science and the story of the cosmos to inspire me, taking up again eco-spiritual practices, taking time in nature, joining the sacred web singers who use music about justice and the earth and its healing, some from Carolyn McDade, who wrote Spirit of Life. I re-experienced that web of life in those times, that re-greening of my soul. And it brought me back to those direct experiences that I had of mystery and wonder, and was able now to recognize that I didn't have to have language to describe that ground of being. What I do know is that I experienced it as a child and teenager, young adult, and now maturing adult. What I know is true for me is that creative energy in the universe is transformative. It connects me to the nature of reality in a way that is beyond reason, but includes the grounding of reason. Now, 8 years later, I'm engaging that creative energy to learn more about my spiritual journey and to invite others to learn about theirs. I heard from some of you that you came to see the play šxʊʔamət, Home, that I was in for Theatre for Living. I learned from the Indigenous practices of those in the company with me and those we met on our tour, the practices that help connect me again to the healing of the earth in many ancient traditions that are alive and well and growing vibrant again. So as a Unitarian, I stood on the agnostic line with my toes dabbling in various descriptions and understandings of theism and my heels in atheism, and I've rocked back and forth. Now, the absolute beauty of being a Unitarian is that in all those stages of my journey, to where even I am now, I can move freely, knowing that I can doubt and question and struggle and share and listen. As I was writing the reflection to share today, I noticed that I actually had gone through all those sources that Unitarians describe. I believe many of you draw on more than one source. To have been part of this Unitarian movement, I know I have companions like you on the journey with me, to support me and for me to offer support to you. We can, as others have said, celebrate that some of us in our life experiences, with our reason and our passion, some of it leads to atheism, for others, agnosticism, others, some form of theism, and others yet to describe their beliefs in words. For you as individuals and as a congregation, how do your beliefs support you now in your struggles and in your joys? Because of your life experiences, how will you share with each other now as you face this new challenge? How will you support one another to examine what's in your belief bags, both as each person and as a community, so that you can bring resilience and healing and hope to yourselves and each other? I'll close with the words by Robert Mabry Das. For all who seek God, may God go with you. For all who embrace life, may life return your affection. For all who seek a right path, may a way be found, and the courage to take it, step by step. So might it be. Amen. Blessed be.